Hello and welcome back everyone, we Weeb Online, and today I'm gonna continue the story What If Fem Naruto Was Madara's Girlfriend Part 6. If you enjoy this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
Konoha Hospital, Konohagakure no Sato, Hatake ni Hainsawa Sakura was talking with Hibiki Neji and Kaiga Shikamaru in a serious way as they stood in front of a hospital ward door. All three of them are frowning. Shikamaru sighed and ruffled his hair with one hand. Troublesome, he said almost with a groan. History has repeated itself, we couldn't stop the Uchiha clan this time. Neji sighed and said, well, I didn't think we'd be able to anyway. The Kyuubi attack had pretty much cleared the way for the coup, but he looked over his shoulder at the ward door that they were standing in front of where 8-year-old Uchiha Sasuke was resting after Sakura and her former Jounin instructor and now stepson had found the boy as a wreck in the middle of Uchiha compound nearly 3 days ago. Neji turned around and headed back to his two friends. That night it was done by more than one person. Shikamaru nodded seriously, but Sakura was shocked. Neji was in charge of the Oinin forces, and Shikamaru is one of the best strategists in the village. They were one of the first people at the Uchiha massacre because they were in high positions in the village military. Even though Sakura was one of the best medic nins in the village, she was at the hospital with Sasuke and wasn't at the crime scene. 3 days had passed since the Uchiha massacre, and now the whole village is angry about the crime and calling for Itachi's blood. But Sakura, Neji, Shikamaru, the Hokage, Dan, Sakumo, and Danzo were some of the few people who knew the truth about the Uchiha massacre. It was hard for them to keep quiet, but it was their duty to do so. They knew what would happen if people in general found out the truth. Minato didn't like it because he didn't see why he should keep something this important from Sasuke, but the daimyo told him to do it, so he has little choice but to follow. Sakura sighed and ran her fingers across her forehead. She said, I don't like it, and Neji and Shikamaru gave her a grim nod. She sighed again. It's almost like history is happening all over again. I know the orders that were given to Itachi, and even though I don't like them, I guess I can see why they were given. Neji was about to groan. Now I know why Seo was so mad at the village for almost 6 months, until she left, he muttered. Shikamaru asked carefully, what are we going to do about Sasuke? He looked at each of them in turn. If we don't bother him, he'll. The three of them were quiet for a few seconds before Sakura let out a sigh. Shikamaru and Neji looked at her when she said, I have an idea. The medic nin with pink hair frowned and looked over her shoulder at the hospital room they were all standing outside of before she turned to her two friends. Sakura bit her lower lip nervously as she said, I'll have to ask Sakumo about this, but I'm sure he'll agree. I'll let him live with us. Shikamaru blinked owlishly. He thought that was the last thing he would ever hear from Sakura. You mean adopt him? Yeah, said Sakura with a nod. Something like that. I doubt he would give up his own name, but if he has a family to help him through this, he will be less likely to run in the future. If he does, though Sakura closed her eyes, then maybe Seo has been right all along about him. Both Neji and Shikamaru kept their mouths shut. They knew that Seo and Sakura would fight a lot about 2 months before Seo went to aim on her mission. After Sasuke tried to kill her for the 3rd time and almost succeeded, the redhead was mad at the Uchiha. Even the most patient people have their limits, and Seo was very close to hers. Seo finally agreed to their mission to find and kill Sasuke Uchiha for high treason, which surprised the head of the ANBU and the head of the Oinin. Sakura didn't take it well, so the two kunoichis got into a big shouting match until Seo lost her temper for the first time. Sakura was shocked to see Seo lose her cool for the first time. Not long after that, the mission to aim happened, and that was the last time Sakura saw Seo. Shikamaru rubbed his eyes tiredly. He said, okay, then let's go. We all have a long night ahead of us, and since the massacre, none of us have slept more than 4 hours a night. Let's go. Sakura nodded tiredly, and the three of them walked out of the hospital together. They all just wanted to go home, take a warm shower, and go to bed. Since Sakumo, Dan, and all of them have been busy since 3 nights ago, the Hokage was nice enough to give them a week off to rest. As they walked down the nearly empty hospital hallway near midnight, Sakura rubbed her tired eyes. They passed a red-haired kunoichi who was leaning against the wall with her arms crossed over her chest. Sakura's mind came back to her as they walked past the redhead. She turned around so quickly that she almost fell over her own feet. But that redhead is no longer there. Sakura gave a confused blink. Was she hallucinating? Hospital. Tsukigakure no Sato. As soon as Seo got back to the landing port of Tsuki, she went straight to the hospital. Itachi was taken to Tsuki's hospital almost as soon as Obaido arrived, because he had overused the Manjikaiu Sharingan. Sana is currently treating his eyes, because if she doesn't put that failsafe in his Manjikaiu, the younger Uchiha could easily go blind in a few years. During the Shinobi clan wars, many Uchihas got the Manjikaiu Sharingan. When one of them almost went blind from using it too much, Sana found out about the side effects and was worried because Izuna and Madara also had the Manjikaiu at the time. Sana started looking into the Manjikaiu and how to keep the person who uses it from going blind. It took her almost a year, but Sana wasn't known as one of the best medic nins of all time for nothing, and she finally figured out how to put that failsafe in the Manjikaiu. All that needs to be done is to use surgery to widen the chakra pathways near the eyes, but even that has risks. Seo only knew of Izuna and Madara because they were brave enough to let Sana use them as test subjects for that treatment, which luckily worked. The only downside is that the user will have to stay in bed for a week after the surgery. During that time, they won't be able to use their eyes, and they won't be able to let light into their eyes, either, so that the chakra pathways can mature. Also, they wouldn't be able to use the Sharingan for at least a year, so that the chakra pathways in their eyes could grow and develop on their own. If they do that, Sana will have to do that surgery all over again. Seo went straight to the part of the hospital that was off limits and to Itachi's room, where Sana and Obaido were with Itachi. Seo walked in, and both of them looked up. Itachi, whose eyes were still bandaged, turned towards Seo only when he heard the door open, with a hopeful look on his face. Seo went to Konoha at Itachi's request, but Madara wasn't happy about it because he didn't care about Konoha anymore, and Sana doesn't care about what happened in the 50 or so years she was asleep. Obaido still cares about his old village, but only for the few people who don't treat him like crap just because he is the black sheep of the Uchiha clan. Seo sighed as she shut the door behind her and leaned against it with her arms crossed over her chest to keep it shut. She told the younger Uchiha, Itachi, he seems to be fine. Itachi was glad to hear that. Oh, thank God, Seo said. You didn't hurt him too badly. But I think the real damage was done to his mind when he saw all the dead bodies of his clansmen and you standing over your parents' bodies with a bloody katana in your hand. Itachi flinched when Seo said that, because he had seen all the dead bodies of his clansmen. But he's your little brother, so he should be fine. The pink-haired doctor, Sakura or something, fixed him up, and from what I heard, it sounds like she wants to adopt him. That's right, Itachi said with a small smile. He thought to himself, Sakura, it must be Hansawa-san, Hadake wife Sama's and Kakashi's stepmother. Senpai's if she's involved. I don't have to worry about Sasuke anymore. Yeah, but I think we should worry more about Raven's Gate, Sana said in a dark voice. They clearly started the Kyuubi attack. They probably didn't expect Seo to get involved, though, given her bad history with Konoha. But the Uchiha massacre, she trailed off. Something tells me they have something to do with it. Seo rubbed her temples and said, yeah, I agree. Then, there was the Uchiha massacre. She stopped there. I wouldn't be surprised if they had something to do with the rumors that the Uchiha clan was behind the Kyuubi attack. That's what caused the Uchiha clan to launch a coup in the first place. Raven's Gate has never liked the Uchiha clan, especially since we were the ones who sealed away their leader and stopped their plans for war when Konoha was first founded. Sana looked sad. From what you said, it sounds like they are coming out into the open now, with the Kyuubi attack, after more than 50 years. Seo sighed. Yeah, I don't like how this makes me feel, she said. It's true that we've always known they'd come out sooner or later, but their recent actions, I think they're desperate. I'm not sure why, but I have a feeling it has something to do with Hyor and Kyuubi. Obaido looked sad. He said, well, Madara-sama said that the Kyuubi is supposed to be this Hyor's mother, and Seo nodded. Hyor is their leader, and Raven's Gate is probably mad at us because we went after their leader's mother and sealed her away in Makai for all time. Seo muttered, well, it's said that Raven's Gate looks up to Hyor and Kyuubi, so what you're saying isn't completely crazy. She then looked at the three other people in the room. Okay, I'll tell our spies and scouts to keep an eye out for Raven's Gate. I'll also tell Aim, Nagato, Yahiko, and Conan, as well as my old student, to do the same. Not known where, Konohagakure no Sato, as a big piece of concrete fell to the ground. It made a loud crash and kicked up several layers of dust. The sound echoed through the empty hallway where three jounin were standing. Sakura coughed and tried to keep the dust from getting into her lungs by covering her mouth and nose, but it didn't work. Shikamaru was sitting next to her, coughing and wheezing like an old man or someone with asthma. Neji was the only one who didn't breathe in when they kicked the concrete slab down. He was now waving his flashlight back and forth, making the light bounce from one end to the other. Neji asked, "Is this the place?" He looked at Sakura, who was standing between him and Shikamaru, but her eyes were hidden. Sakura nodded, and she kept coughing to get the dust out of her lungs. "Yes, Sakumo gave me the coordinates for this place. It leads to one of Orochimaru's labs in Konoha," she said, then frowned. "Orochimaru was one of the people who caused us the most trouble when we were genin. If he's not around, Sasuke probably won't leave Konoha." Shikamaru sighed. He told her, "Sakura, I wouldn't be so sure about that." Shikamaru added, "You can fool yourself if you want, but you're not stupid. You know as well as the rest of us that Sasuke is a lost cause. But we've changed some things for him here, so hopefully he won't be as much of a traitor as he was back then. Though I wouldn't hope for that." Sakura didn't say a word, but she sighed. She said, "Well, I'll do my best to steer him away from the wrong path. I think it's down here," she said, pointing her finger down the dark hallway. Two of her friends went with her as she did this. It was a long walk, maybe 30 minutes or so, before Sakura stopped by the wall on the right side of the hallway and looked at the map that her husband had given her the day before. Sakumo used to be in charge of the ANBU in Konoha. He was one of the most important people in the village, and he had access to secret information. When Sakura told him that she wanted to look into Orochimaru's labs that had been left empty after he left the village 8 years ago, Sakumo gave her a map that he and Dan had made with all the known locations of Orochimaru's labs marked on it. The three of them are in a hallway that leads to one of Orochimaru's labs. It is in one of the underground passages of Konoha. "This is the entrance to the lab that was marked on this map," said Sakura, looking from the map to the wall in front of her and back to the map with a frown on her face. Shikamaru looked at the wall in front of him and asked, "This wall?" He raised one eyebrow as he did so. Neji frowned before quietly turning on his Byakugan under his blindfold. Both his allies and his enemies think he is blind because that blindfold is always over his eyes. This gives him a few advantages in battle. Because of his handicap, his enemies always underestimated him in battle, and he can use his Byakugan without showing the bulging veins around his eyes when he has his blindfold on. Then Neji made a frown. He turned off his Byakugan and said, "It's a fake wall. Sakura, break down the wall." Sakura asked Armstrong, "What do I look like?" Armstrong told her by pulling one fist back and punching the wall in front of her. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, when Sakura's fist hit the wall, spider-like cracks started to form. Then, the whole wall just fell apart in front of them, covering them from head to toe with thick dust that must have stayed there for almost 8 years. Sakura cried out, "Oh God, I hate this," as she coughed and wheezed from the dust in her lungs. Neji and Shikamaru were also hacking up their lungs next to her. It took a few seconds for the dust in the air and in their lungs to go away, and then the three Jounin looked at each other. Neji said with a tired voice, "It's a good thing Sakumo-san isn't here," and Sakura and Shikamaru both laughed. Sakumo's sharp nose and sensitive senses are almost as good as any in Yuzuka being here with them when they're all almost dying from the dust in here. "Okay, let's go in," Sakura said with some hesitation, almost afraid of what she might find inside. She had already been to some of Orochimaru's old hiding places and found things that shouldn't even be mentioned. Sakura was glad that she didn't find any kind of experiments. Instead, she found a room that looked like a study, with papers all over the tables and a dusty floor. Sakura asked Neji, "Is there power running through here?" Because the constant darkness was hurting her eyes. Neji said, "Just a second," and then he felt around the wall for the switch. He finally found it and turned it on. Much to their relief, the room was filled with light right away, and Neji turned off the flashlight. He had to blink a few times to get used to the sudden brightness, but as soon as he did, he went straight to the table in the middle of the small room. As he did this, Shikamaru and Sakura crowded around him. The diagrams and reports on the table and floor looked like they were from an experiment that would give a person superhuman strength for a short time. But the reports didn't seem to be complete. It seems more like Orochimaru gave up on those experiments in the middle, which all three of them find strange. Neji was reading a few reports about something called chakra poisoning, which seemed to be a disease, and it looked like Orochimaru was trying to find a way to treat it. Neji rolled his eyes and shook his head. Impossible. He knew that the Orochimaru he knew would never act like this. It's not in his nature to help other people. Even his own teacher and a few other people were killed by him. How could he really want to help other people? The day this will happen is the day Uchiha Madara changes for the better. Just then, Shikamaru let out a whistle. "Hey, I found something." "What?" Sakura asked Shikamaru as she walked over to him. Shikamaru seemed to be holding a dusty leather-bound journal. "A journal?" Shikamaru looked at it carefully before making a sad face. He said, "It's done." He muttered, "Must be something important then," and then set to work to open the journal. It didn't take long for him to open the first door. Everyone has left. All of them are gone. I dislike war. It takes everything away and leaves nothing but more pain and suffering in its wake. When that nice lady, Seo-san, took me back to her village, she gave me this. We've all heard stories about that ninja village. Konoha. She put me in touch with this person, Madara-san or something like that. And I met a nice guy who said his name was Haru-san and a hurt ninja whose name was Danzo. Everyone is so nice to me, but they aren't my mom and dad. This book was given to me by Seo-san. She told me to write down all my thoughts, both happy and sad, and that doing so would make me feel better. I don't know, but there's not much I can do with this journal anyway. Sakura, Shikamaru and Neji exchanged looks. He said something about a Seo in here, Sakura finally said slowly. It just can't. Shikamaru nodded grimly. And Madara, surely not Uchiha Madara? He murmured. And Haru, I only know of one person with that name during the time when Orochimaru is a child, and he seems quite young when he wrote this entry. I don't know, maybe 4 or 5. That person is Uchiha Haruki, Sasuke's grandfather and the leader of the Uchiha clan after Uchiha Madara. There's only one Haru during that time, Neji then said, and Danzo. He then made a face. What does Seo have to do with Orochimaru and Danzo? Shikamaru muttered, we'll probably find out when we read the rest. And then he went to work on opening the next journal entry. It looked like almost a year had passed between the first and second entries. The first week of school is over. Finally, don't those girls understand what the word no means? No, I suppose not. The other guy, what does he go by now? Or something like Jiraiya. Okay, for the son of the head merchant, he seems happy enough, and at least he doesn't give me those annoying pitying looks that almost everyone else did. Leaving the academy aside, Seo-san told me some good news. She said she would teach me. Jiraiya will be training with me, which is a bad thing. It wouldn't hurt, so why not? He's not as annoying as those dumb girls in my class, at least. That Danzo guy is an old student of Seo-sensei, and he was helping Seo-sensei teach Jiraiya and me how to control our chakras. I've fallen off the tree so many times and landed on my head that I've lost track. I hope it's not true that when you fall on your head, you become a fool. When I said that, Seo-sensei laughed. Danzo-sensei also gave me a strange look before telling me that he would love to see what kind of ninja I grow up to be. Oh, and don't forget Jiraiya either. When they were done reading the second entry, Sakura's face looked like she had just seen a ghost. She finally moaned, "You can't be serious. Why did Seo train Orochimaru? Why him?" Shikamaru groaned, and she taught Danzo, too. This is a problem, because Seo trained 2 of our biggest enemies. Next thing we know, we'll find out that Seo also trained Itachi. Neji sighed. Shikamaru, please write the next entry, he asked. Shikamaru grumbled, fine. Don't hurry me, as he opened the next sealed page. The next entry was written 6 months after the last one, and the handwriting was messy, which was very different from the large, neat handwriting in the previous entries. The village seems different this morning. Jiraiya and I got up and went to the academy as usual, but when we got there, there was a sign on the front doors saying that the academy would be closed for the day. I think it's strange. I could only hope that Seo-sensei was okay, especially after her short fight with those 3 from the Hyuga clan the day before. I only want Seo-sensei to be happy. She is the reason I live. She will save my life, and she will also teach me how to be a ninja. I remember telling her once that when I become a ninja, I will protect her with my life. Seo-sensei just smiled and said she was looking forward to it. She also said that each generation gets stronger than the one before it. She told me that she wants me to get stronger than both her and Madara-sama. Me, stronger than the legendary Kunoichi Seo-sensei, who almost everyone in the elemental nations has heard of. Impossible. When Seo-sensei saved me, I made a promise to myself and swore in front of the graves of my parents. I told Seo-sensei that I would protect him no matter what. I won't let her down. Not like I let my parents down. No matter what happens, even if she turns against me, I won't let her down. I will look out for her. She is the only one who can save me. She is allowed to take it back if she wants to. I won't let her down. When the academy closed for the day and I didn't see any ninjas on the streets except for the usual chunins guarding the gates, I knew something was wrong. I left the academy and went to the Hokage's office to talk to Tabarama-sama or Seo-sensei about the strange things that happened that day, when almost half of the village's ninjas went missing for no apparent reason. Even before I got to the Hokage's office, I was interested in what 2 women were talking about. One of them was the Hokage's secretary, so I knew they were talking about him. I heard someone say, Uchiha Madara and Uchiha Seo have both left the village and killed Senju Hashirama, the Shodaime Hokage. They didn't convince me. How dare they use my sensei's name in a bad way in front of me? My sensei wouldn't do something like that. Even if she does, she has to have a good reason. Seo sensei loves his village more than anything else in the world. She, not the Hokage and his brother, built the village into what it is now. I went to the Roots headquarters, which was the next best place I knew I could find answers. I found Danzo-senpai and Haru-senpai having a serious talk in Danzo office. Senpai's Haru-sensei looked angry and said something about how the council was demanding a total lockdown on the Uchiha clan because their clan head had betrayed them. Then, of course, they both saw me. I asked them about the rumors I'd heard around town and asked for Seo-sensei. Danzo-sensei and Haru-sensei looked at each other before turning back to me. Both of them looked at me with angry and sad eyes and told me what really happened. Seo-sensei and Madara-sama have both left the village, that much is true. They also killed the Hokage, which is also true. But that's only because the Hokage was the first to betray them. I asked Haru-senpai what the Hokage did to them, because even Haru-senpai, who is always calm and collected, looked like she was about to blow. No matter how much I asked, Haru-senpai wouldn't tell me. He only told me that Seo-sensei and Madara-sama are not traitors, so I could rest easy. The only reason they did what they did was because they had to. I kept hearing for almost a whole week after that Seo-sensei and Madara-sama are traitors and that the whole Uchiha clan would be better off dead. I didn't want to hear them. My sensei is no traitor. She must have been very upset about something to do something like this. When Tobirama-sama became the next Hokage, he rejected every plan from the council to punish the Uchiha clan. Even though his brother was killed by a Uchiha, he seems to support them instead. Haru-senpai became the leader of the Uchiha clan. Unlike Madara-sama, the clan council and the other clans didn't bother him, so much so that almost every clan is afraid of having to deal with him. Everyone in the village believed the story that Seo-sensei and Madara-sama had gone crazy and killed the Hokage when he tried to stop them from defecting. I did not believe them. I know my sensei better than anyone else, so I won't believe those lies. I know that Haru-sensei and Danzo-sensei knew what really happened that night. They wouldn't tell me, though. No matter how much I asked and begged, they wouldn't tell me. I promised myself then that I would find my way back to Seo-sensei. This is what I swear. I will look for her, whatever happens. Lake Kagami, Tsukigakure no Sato. Lake Kagami is a beautiful lake in the back of the village. It is on the border between Tsukigakure and the water country. The lake's water is so clear and pretty that you can almost see the fish swimming at the bottom. Tsuki Academy students were often brought to this lake by their teachers to practice controlling their chakra. Every Friday afternoon, the people of Tsukigakure would see the academy students making their way back to the academy, drenched. The lake is also a great place for dates, and Uchiha Madara could be found there around sundown. The head of Tsukigakure was sitting at the edge of the lake with a saucer half full of sake to his lips and several sake bottles around him. He was staring into the horizon of the lake. Madara muttered, "Izuna, I can finally keep my promise to you," as he drank the sake. He had a half-full saucer of sake next to him as a gift for his dead brother. During the Shinobi clan wars, the two brothers would often drink sake when they weren't fighting or going on missions. "I'll take care of Sena," said Madara with a sad smile as he set the empty saucer down next to him. "You should hate me. I killed you. Maybe if you were still alive, the clan wouldn't be like this. Why doesn't anyone hate me for your death? Even Sena doesn't blame me. I don't even have the guts to tell your son the truth about your death. I'm a coward." Just then, he felt arms around his neck from behind. When he turned his head, he saw Seo hugging him from behind and resting her cheek on his shoulder. With that small gesture, she showed that she would always be there for him and help him. Madara gave Seo a small smile and touched her fingers with his own. He then looked at the lake, where a light mist was beginning to roll over the water. "Seo, why do you always stay with me, no matter what? You've never given up on me, no matter what people say about me or what I've done. And you didn't leave me either. Even when Izuna died back then, you would never have blamed me for that. Not even once. I didn't do anything wrong." Thinking about Izuna again, Seo asked in a low tone, "You are always so sad on the anniversary of his death, and Sena always disappears on this day." Madara smiled sadly. Madara said, "Izuna would probably kick my behind if he saw me acting this stupid. That's how he's always been." Seo laughed. She said, "Well, I guess so. Now that I think about it, Obaido is a lot like Izuna was when we were young, and Itachi looks just like him when he was that age," she said with a sigh. "They are, after all, his children." "Yeah, I suppose so," Madara admitted. "So what did you come here for? Something important, I guess. You never come to see me during Izuna's death anniversary unless something important cropped up." Seo sighed. Got it right in one, she said as she got away from Madara. He turned around to face his wife as the redhead reached into her pocket and pulled out some kind of letter and a few photos. Madara looked at the photos and asked with a raised eyebrow, "What are those?" It looked a lot like the photos that the ninja investigators in the village always took of the dead bodies of the people involved in a case as proof. Sayo held up a letter with the seal of Aimgakure's leader, Yahiko, and said, "This came by Aim's fastest messenger Falcon early this morning, right after you left." Yahiko sent it. Madara frowned. Yahiko almost never talks to them unless he has something important to tell them. Nagato and Conan were always in charge of communication between Tsuki and Aim. They would visit once every 3 months, and Yahiko trusted them the most. They were the second in commands of Aim's military and Yahiko's most trusted men. "How did he talk?" Sayo said. "He told me that his patrols have been finding a lot of strange bodies near their borders and territories lately. Bodies of their ninjas and intruders. Conan told me about a month ago, when she and Nagato made their usual visits, that there have been intruders intruding on Aim's borders and territories lately. Their village affiliation is unknown. Those strange bodies didn't start showing up until a few weeks ago." Madara frowned. "How is it strange?" he asked. Sayo sighed. "Look at these, and you'll see," she said, throwing a few of the photos she had been holding to Madara. Madara took the photos from Sayo with interest, but when he looked at them, his eyebrows nearly shot to the top of his hairline. In every picture, the dead bodies were burned black. Not from a katen jutsu, though. Whatever set those bodies on fire burned them down to their bones and left only half of the skeletons. Even the bones that were left were pitch black and looked like they were about to fall apart at any moment. Sayo sighed. "The most interesting thing Conan told me was that she was the doctor who did the autopsy on those bodies. The poor people had only been dead for a few days when the border patrol found them. Yahiko thinks it might be a new jutsu or even them." Madara was quiet for a long time as he looked at the photos. When he finally turned to Sayo, he had a look of silent anger in his eyes. "It's not a mistake. These wounds," he said as he looked at the photo and then turned back to Sayo. "That Kenjutsu did it." "Yeah, I thought the same thing when Yahiko gave me these." Sayo nodded, looking down at the photos Madara was holding. She looked at Madara and said, "Only they could have done something like this. Bone Eater is a form of torture that could have been mistaken for a curse. It uses the cursed flames of hell to slowly eat away at the victim's flesh, nerves, and bones. It's a technique that was made for torture and interrogation. It's effective, but also cruel." Sayo glared at the pictures. Only an onmyaji like Hyor could have thought of something like this, which makes it one of that group's signature moves. "I remember that curse caused us a lot of trouble during that war when Konoha was being founded." Madara sighed. "First the Kyuubi attacked, then the Uchiha were killed. And now this," he said, pointing to the pictures he was holding. He looked at his wife and said, "I was hoping they wouldn't show up for a while, but it looks like I was wrong. It looks like Raven's Gate is on the move at last. Tsukigakure no Sato, Tsuki no Kuni. The Chunin exams will be held at Konoha." That was the first sentence that Uchiha Madara saw, and as one of the oldest Uchihas still alive, he can't help but just stare at the scroll in his hands. Since Tsuki is one of the Great Six, the hosting village sends them an invitation like this every single year. But most of the time they say no, unless the Chunin exams are in Aimgakure. But Madara isn't sure what to do about the Chunin exams this time. It had been 4 years since the Uchiha incident, and since then they'd heard from the leader of AIM and his 2 seconds about the Bone Eater incident. This was the first piece of evidence they'd gotten in over 50 years about an organization they'd been looking for since the time of the Shinobi clan wars. Orochimaru, an old student of his wife's, told him about a month ago that Suna had been acting strangely lately, and there were rumors that the Kazekage had been meeting with the leader of the new village that had started up in the rice field country, Otagakyore, sometime in the last year. Sayo had to look around for a while before she figured out that this Oto village is one of Raven's Gate's many subordinates. Not that it would surprise Madara, for an organization like them, which had such twisted ideas and had been around for as long as they had. They were bound to have all kinds of underground connections with all kinds of people and places. It's probably not too much of a stretch to think that they have spies in almost every village except for Tsuki. Unlike other villages, Tsuki took security to a whole new level and checked the backgrounds of every single shinobi in their village. Sayo made sure that was the case. She was right, and Madara agreed. After what Hashirama did to them, they have every reason to be scared. And if Raven's Gate is involved, they should check security more carefully. Also, Yahiko told Madara about some rumors that Nagato had heard when he was in Suna 2 weeks ago on a delegate mission. During the Chunin exams, there were rumors that Konoha was going to be attacked. The redhead who knew how to use the Rinnegan had accidentally walked into a bar and heard some drunk Sunanin talking about it. Since the ninja was drunk at the time, Nagata wasn't sure what to make of it. However, he thought it was important to tell Yahiko, who was worried about the rumors. Even so, everyone on the elemental continents knows that Tsuki doesn't like Konoha very much. However, the Leaf Village has no idea how or why this started in the first place. Since Sarutobi Hijin was the third Hokage, Konoha has been trying to get better relations and maybe even an alliance with Tsuki, but Madara has been standing in the way at every turn. And, of course, no one in any village except Yahiko had seen the face of the cage of Tsukigakure until this day. But this time, Yahiko is worried about the invasion rumors, especially because his first sensei lived in Konoha. 2 years after Seo and Madara saved the AIM trio from certain death at the hands of Hanzo, and after Yahiko became the leader of Aimgakure, Jiraiya of the Sannin ran into AIM and scared the hell out of the AIM trio. He must have heard from one of his spies that the three of them are still alive, even though he thought they were dead, and he came running to check if the rumors were true. Yahiko had written to Madara to tell him that he hoped Madara would send Tsuki Genin teams to Konoha this year for the Chunin exams. Even though he knew why Madara never sent Genin teams from Tsuki to take Chunin exams, the leader of Aimgakure wanted to protect his sensei's home from a possible invasion. Madara finally sighed and looked up from the scroll he had been looking at for the past 30 minutes. He looked at both Seo and Seina. The frowns on the faces of the two women are the same. Madara asked, "What do you both think?" There was silence for a while before Seo let out a sigh. "From my point of view, I think we should go," she said. The redhead then put up her hand to stop what Seina and Madara were about to say. "Let me explain. Ever since the Kyuubi attack, we've all known that Raven's Gate is still alive and has been trying to find ways to bring back their lord, Toshigaki Hyor. It's been 12 years since the attack, and there have been a number of small events happening all over the elemental continents that are somehow related to them. The seal I put on Hyor isn't eternal. No seal is. It will break one day. But Ravens." Seina looked sad. "Well, Tsuki is, but no one else knows that except for AIM," she replied. "They only knew us as a secretive and powerful village that specializes in intelligence and sealing techniques and has top-notch medical arts. But if what you said is true, that they're looking for ways to bring their master back to life, then that's why they went after the Uchiha clan 4 years ago." She trailed off. Seo nodded when Madara said, "They probably thought that the key to breaking the seal was somewhere in the Uchiha clan compound, since Seo is a Uchiha." He then made a face. "But since the massacre, no one has lived in the Uchiha clan compound," he sighed. "This isn't good. It's definitely not good." Before we left, Seo put a number of forbidden techniques in Hashirama's forbidden scroll. These techniques include the Ito Tensei technique that Tobirama and Orochimaru have worked on since we left, and which Orochimaru finished when he was in his 20s. She also put in a number of highly classified and dangerous sealing techniques. If this invasion is real, and Raven's Gate got their hands on the forbidden scroll, it wouldn't be good. They won't be able to break the seal on Hyor with any of the techniques in there, but it still wouldn't be good. Even after more than 80 years, we still don't know what their main goal is. I know that AIM is sending a team of genin to take part, and Konan and Nagata will be there until the third round of the Chunin exams as Yahiko's representatives, Seina said with a frown. "But who should we send from our side? I don't think it's a good idea to send more than one genin team. With how secretive we are, I don't think anyone but Yahiko, Nagato, Konan, and our own people even knew where Tsukigakure is." Seo frowned and said, "I plan to keep it that way." "Madara, are there any genin teams ready to take a Chunin exam in a foreign country? Please keep in mind that they might also have to deal with some political issues, as this is the first time that Tsuki will send a genin team to the Chunin exams. So please make sure that they all have at least some training in diplomacy." Madara sighed and reached for a brown folder on his desk. He flipped through a few pages before stopping and reading the profiles of the 3 genins and their jounin teacher over and over again. Then he took another look at his wife and sister-in-law. He said, "Zabuza's team is ready. Yukina Haku, who uses ice, is on his team. Sasaki Rihun, the rookie of the year and heir to a legendary swordsman clan, and Tatsuyama Kaio are also on his team." Momochi Zabuza was actually picked up by Hoshigaki Kasama, a new member of the Akatsuki, Tsukigakure's elite bodyguard force, who joined not long after the Mist Rebellion by the 7 Swordsmen of the Mist. Itachi had actually been the one to pick him up. Not long after the Uchiha massacre, the teen had been sent on a mission near the border of Mist, where he met Kasama. Madara doesn't know what happened between the two. He doesn't know that Itachi was able to convince a man as stubborn as Hoshigaki Kasama to join Tsuki, and that Kasama later became Itachi's partner in the Akatsuki. About 5 years ago, Kasama met Zabuza and his new apprentice. Zabuza was the last surviving member of the famous Ice User clan in Kiri. The shark-like man had come to Kiri on a scouting mission and ran into Kasama and Zabuza. Zabuza was kind of Kasama's kuhai, and Kasama had agreed to join Tsuki and bring Haku with him. Madara didn't manage to trick Zabuza into joining a genin team until later this year, much to his displeasure. Sana frowned when the name of the last genin was brought up. Tetsuyama, she said slowly. I've heard that clan name before. Sayo and Madara looked at each other and smiled. Sayo turned to Sana and said they would. The name Tatsuyama is feared in every shinobi country. If you remember, we met some of their clan members during the shinobi clan wars. Sana clapped her hands together. Now I remember, she exclaimed. They're that clan that uses death and life techniques, right? They can take an opponent's life to heal their own wounds or those of their allies, even if they are about to die. And they can heal or kill with just a touch. A Tatsuyama can steal the life force of others to make their own lives longer, which is a scary ability. Well, yes, Madara said in a strange way. Some people in the village don't like the Tatsuyama clan being here, but they don't hate them either. Tatsuyama Kaio is the clan heir, and the clan is almost extinct because its members refused to marry because they didn't want their children to suffer like they did. It's a sad life for the Tatsuyama clan, knowing that they can control life and death the way they did. They're the closest humans can get to being Shinigami. Kano Hagakure no Sato, Hai no Kuni, Namikaze Minato, the Yondaime Hokage, was in the Hokage's office. He looked at how many Jounins and Chunins were there. Even the third Hokage, Sarutobi Hijin, who had retired, was there. He was Minato's advisor and liked to be at meetings like this. The golden-haired Hokage called all of his high-ranking ninjas together for a briefing on the security, procedures, and proctors that would be needed for the upcoming Chunin exams in Konoha. This is why they are all here now. Okay, moving on, Minato said as he cleared his throat and flipped through some papers on his desk until he found the one he was looking for. According to rules of procedure and diplomacy, we invited every ninja village to the Chunin exams. Iwa, Kumo, and Kiri all turned down our invitations. Namikaze ni Uzumaki Kushina, who was married to Minato and was one of Konoha's best jounin, sighed. Like always, the ANBU captain with red hair sighed. And I'm guessing Tsuki turned us down, too, she said more than asked, since almost every ninja on the continent knows that Tsuki-nin would never take a Chunin exam other than their own private one, unless AIM is the host. Minato made a frown. He said, no, not this time, which surprised almost every ninja in the room. It was surprising that they said they would come this year and that they would send one genin team. Only one genin team? Asked Sarutobi Asuma in surprise. That's strange. Most ninja villages send at least 3 genin teams to the Chunin exams, unless they're from Hoshi or Taki, which are smaller villages. He lit his cigarette as he talked, but his Hokage politely coughed and stopped him. Asuma then let out a sigh and crushed the cigarette with his bare hands, which made the Hokage, his father, and a few other ninjas cringe. The bearded jounin then threw the cigarette into a trash can nearby. Hatake Sakumo spoke up from his corner and said AIM would be taking part this year, too. Yahiko-sen sent a message that Nagato and Konan would be his representatives, he said with a smile. We still owe them for the help they gave us with the Hyuga case. The jounins in the room, especially those from the Hyuga clan, gave him grim smiles. Yahiko sent Nagato and Konan to Konoha about 9 years ago for a meeting about border relations. And it just so happens that their visit happens at the same time as the Hyuga diplomats' visit to Konoha. Minato had to move his meeting with the 2 AIM delegates because of this. Nagato and Konan were both very polite and didn't let it bother them. Jiraiya was in Konoha at the time, and the 3 of them spent a lot of time catching up in a bar on the night that the Kumo delegates met with the Hokage. This may have had something to do with it. As luck would have it, their meeting with their sensei went late into the night, and as Nagato and Konan were walking back to the inn where they were staying, they saw a Kumo nin trying to kidnap the 3-year-old Hyuga heiress. The key word here is trying, because Konan, who was a woman, didn't like people who tried to take her away. Even before Hyuga Hizashi and Hyuga Hayashi came around the corner, the kidnapper had already been taken down and knocked out. Minato was furious when he found out, and Yondaime Hokage scolded the Raikage when the Raikage tried to get Konoha to pay for attacking his ninjas. Minato had actually threatened Kumo with war if they kept pushing the issue, even though he knew Kumo couldn't afford to go to war right now. Nagato and Konan have helped with this by saying that they stopped the Kumo nin. Since Nagato and Konan are also AIM delegates, the Raikage had no choice but to swallow his pride and apologize. Since then, though, relations between Kumo and Konoha, especially with the Hyuga clan, have been pretty tense. Minato heard from Yahiko that Kumo had asked Tsuki for help in a war against Konoha. This means that Tsuki were already involved in this situation back then. It seems that the Tsukikage had had enough, so they told them that if Tsuki had to choose a side in a war, it would not be Kumo's. And if the Raikage kept pushing them, they would stop doing business with Kumo. That made Kumo stop, because no village wants to stop trading with Tsuki. Tsuki no Kuni is the only country on the continent that grows flowers and herbs with great healing properties, and it also has a lot of mining materials. Minato was thankful to Tsuki and said so. Even he doesn't want to fight against Tsuki, which is known for having the best sealing techniques of any village. And as a master of seals, he knew how dangerous seals users could be in battle. A Hyuga Jounin said, Hayashi-sama and Hisashi-sama would like to eat with them once they arrive. After what happened with the Hyuga clan, Hayashi and Hisashi took the chance to get rid of the Elder Council and unite the Hyuga clan as one. They did this with the help of Minato, who had grown up with the twins and knew that they didn't like the caged bird seal. Along with the people from Tsuki, we never got a chance to thank them properly back then, after all. Minato said with a smile, well, I'm sure things could be worked out. The letter from the Tsukikage also says that he will send one of his best ninjas as a representative here. Well, let's move on. Minato looked at the papers in his hands and said to his ninjas, I'm going to send one of my best ninjas. Now, we'll choose teams. As you know, any genin who has completed at least 20 D rank missions can take the Chunin exams. Asuma, Kakashi, and Kurenai, please step forward. The three Jounins did so. Would any of you three like to name your teams? Kakashi will go first. Kakashi made a half-ram seal under his chin and said in a bored voice, I don't know what to do. I, Hadake Kakashi, the Jounin instructor of Genin Cell 7, which is made up of Namikaze Takara, Uchiha Hadake Sasuke, and Kadu AI, nominate all three of you to take the Chunin exams in my name. Asuma did the same as Kakashi and made a half-ram seal under his chin. I, Saruto by Asuma, am the Jounin instructor for Genin Cell 10. I nominate Narashika, Akamichi Chouji, and Yamanaka Ino to take the Chunin exams. Kurenai was the last one, and she made a half-ram seal under her chin like the other two Jounins had done. I, Yui Kurenai, the Jounin instructor of Genin Cell 8, nominate Aburame Shino, and Yuzuka Kiba, and Hyuga Hinata to take the Chunin exams under my name. Almost everyone in the Hokage's office muttered. After all, rookies hadn't been invited to the Chunin exams for at least 30 years. Just then, Yumino Aruka stepped forward. The academy teacher had a look of panic on her face. Hokage-sama, I have to say no to this, Aruka said quickly. I'm sorry to speak out of turn, but those genin who were just chosen were once my students. Yes, that's what you just said, Aruka-san, Kakashi said calmly as he buried his nose in his book. They're no longer your students, they're my soldiers now. From where he was, Madogai frowned. But still, isn't it a little early to pick your teams? He asked, and for once he didn't yell about youth. I waited at least a year before putting my team up for nomination, said the spandex-wearing Jounin, who then looked at Minato. Hokage-sama, in Madogai's Genin Cell 9, there are 3 Hyuga Kisuke, 1 Rock Lee, and 1 Higurashi Tenten. I nominate these 3 genin to take the Chunin exams. Aruka, I trust what they say. Hadake Nihinsawa Sakura said, putting a hand on the shoulder of the worried Chunin she had cared for a while after his parents died in the Kyuubi attack. If they didn't think their teams were ready, they wouldn't have put them forward. Kakashi thanked his stepmother for being there for him, and Sakura nodded back in silence. Sakumo smiled, but then he saw that Katudan's eyes were worried because his son was a rookie and would be taking the Chunin exams. Then Minato cleared his throat again to get everyone's attention. The blonde Hokage said, okay, I'll let all 4 of the nominated genin teams take the Chunin exams. He then looked around the room at the other Jounins who have genin teams. Now, are there any other Jounin instructors who want to enter their teams? The office of Aimkage, Aimgakure no Sato. Nagato walked into Yahiko's office and said, Yahiko, there's a letter from Tsuki. Yahiko's desk was half covered with papers, and Konan was helping the orange-haired man sort through them. Madara-san finally agreed to let one genin team take the Chunin exams, but only Seina-san would be going as a Tsuki delegate. Seo-san is now looking into Raven's Gate in the New Odo village, so we should hear from her soon. Yahiko gave a deep nod. He said, well, it's better than nothing. He gave Nagato a quick look. Once you get to Konoha, you know what to do. Nagato nodded. I know. Don't worry, Yahiko, I'll be with him, Konan said to comfort him. Nagato can take care of himself anyway. Yahiko sighed. He said, I hope I'm just making too much of things. The 9th training ground. Kano Hagakure no Sato. Hey, did you guys hear? Asked a boy in green spandex who was leaning against a wooden post on the training grounds. I heard some jounin talking about the 3 rookie teams going to the Chunin exams coming up. Really? A girl with buns in her hair asked as she twirled kunais in her hand. It's probably some jocks making bets with each other, which happens all the time. I'm not sure about that, said the boy in spandex. Well, I mean I heard that Copy Team Nins is also entering. Hadake Kakashi's team? Asked a third voice, whose owner gave a small grin. Interesting. Well, it doesn't matter to me either way, said the kunoichi as she walked a few meters away from her teammates, twirling her kunais and then throwing them so fast that they couldn't even be seen. All of the kunais hit the target that the second boy was sitting under. He hadn't even blinked. Tsukikige's office. Tsukigakure no Sato. Seo sighed. She told Madara, who looked very worried, I hope I'm not making too much of this, but I have a bad feeling about this. I'm going to go look into some leads I've gotten about Raven's Gate and the place where I sealed Hyor away. Also, Orochimaru told me there were rumors about a guy named Kakuzu. Madara's eyes got narrow. Kakuzu, he stopped short. Not the same Kakuzu we fought in Shomtsu village during the Shinobi clan wars. Seo sighed and nodded. Exactly the same, she replied. After all, it's not a very common name, she said with a frown. So he made it, she thought. Well, I'm not surprised. That immortality technique that he'd attempted back then had a good chance of succeeding if he fulfilled all the requirements. But if the rumors are to be believed, and from our brief encounter with him back then, he is part of Raven's Gate as well. Madara frowned. Then there is a good chance that we might end up facing him again, he stated, and Seo nodded. He then sighed. How troublesome. The day before the Chunin exams actually commenced had Konoha receiving several visitors, the majority of them examinees. But the Chunin exam that year had most of the ninjas of Konoha excited, as this will be the first time that Tsuki had actually sent genins for participation. Despite being one of the Great Six, Tsuki is by far the most mysterious of the lot, as no one knew who their Tsukikage is, the strength of their ninjas, where their village is, what techniques they use. None at all. And unlike all the other villages of the Great Six, Tsuki had never actually participated in any of the Shinobi Wars at all, though none of the other villages were naive and stupid enough to believe that they're weak. If they are skilled enough to hide the location of their village away from prying eyes for all these years, and being such a mystery ever since the time of the Second Great Shinobi War, then they are bound to be skilled. Furthermore, any other ninjas who tried to enter the lands of Tsuki no Kuni always found themselves caught and surrounded within moments, no matter how hard that they tried to hide themselves. And up to this day, no one even knew just how Tsuki does it. Furthermore, it is well known that Tsuki specializes in seals, and there were rumors that their skills in sealing as well as medical ninjutsu is enough to make any seal master and even the legendary medic Tsunade drool in envy. Hence, that afternoon, the 2 Konoha Chunin guards on duty at Konoha's front gates, Hagane Kotsu and Kamizuki Izumo, perked up after allowing a disgruntled team from Odo entry. Apparently, that team wasn't happy with just how much paperwork that they have to fill out just to enter the village. A group of foreign ninjas were approaching the front gates of Konoha, strolling along casually as if they do not have a care in the world. None of them were carrying any backpacks with them, and even the tallest in the group, a male jounin, only had a sword strapped to his back. There were 2 senior ninjas whom Kotsu assumed were the jounins. One was a male jounin whilst the other is a dark-haired female nearly 2.5 heads shorter than him. And there were 3 young ninjas with them whom Kotsu assumed were the genins. The team from AIM had just reported in less than an hour ago, and had informed the Chunins at the gate that the team from Tsuki would be at Konoha anytime soon. The tall male Tsuki jounin was dressed in a white sleeveless shirt with a black sleeveless vest over it, with gray cargo pants and black ninja sandals, with black fingerless gloves on his hands. Bandages were also concealing the bottom part of his face, and he had his hidaite tied around his forehead. The other jounin was petite-looking and small in size, but Kotsu knew better than to underestimate a kunoichi. After all, Yugao is a woman and looks as if she wouldn't hurt a fly, yet she is one of the deadliest ANBUs that Konoha has to offer, and could easily kick his ass. The female Tsuki jounin had raven black hair just reaching a little past her shoulders, with dark eyes. She had on a white t-shirt with a black sleeveless vest worn over it, and with black shorts that just reaches to her thighs. Like her male companion, she had on black ninja sandals as well, but she had bandages bound around her ankles and the soles of her feet. She had her hidaite tied around her neck, and it is a little difficult to notice because of her hidaite. But she also had a black choker around her neck with a silver cross pendant hanging from it. The three genins with them were looking at the gates of Konoha with interest and some curiosity in their eyes. The only female Kunoichi genin had raven black hair reaching just a little past her shoulder blades with gray eyes, and she had a light pink battle kimono on, with black shorts worn beneath it for modesty. A pair of curved blades was concealed cleverly in a black sash tied around her waist, the blades resting against her back. A medic pack could also be seen around her waist, next to the standard ninja pack that every ninja has, with her kunai pouch tied around her right thigh. A pair of white wristbands could be seen around both wrists, and a black ribbon was tied around her neck, a little difficult to see because of her hidaite that is also tied around her neck. The more serious-looking male genin whom Kotsu assumed was the genin leader of the trio was looking on with a bored expression. Yet the Chunin wasn't fooled, as he noted the sharp and intelligent look in the genin's eyes. The male genin was at least half a head taller than the Kunoichi genin, and he had silver hair that fell just a little below his ears, falling down around his face, with dark blue eyes. A black choker with a blade pendant hung from around his neck, and he had his hidaite tied around his left arm. He was wearing a storm gray t-shirt with black cargo pants, a beige jacket tied around his waist. A nadachi hung from a gray cloth holster on his back, and he wore black ninja sandals on his feet, and fingerless gloves on his hands. The other male genin was more cheerful looking, with golden blonde hair tied in a short ponytail at his nape, with the hair reminding Kotsu of his Hokage. Though unlike the Hokage, this genin had the most curious shade of eyes, with the color in a mix between red and orange. He was dressed in a deep red t-shirt with black cargo pants and a black jacket with silver zippers worn over it. His hidaite was tied around his forehead, and along with the standard ninja packs that every ninja has, he also had a few bamboo tubes attached to the belt around his waist. Izumo had also obviously noticed the Tsuki team approaching them, as he had turned towards them after having finished dealing with the disgruntled Odo team. "Halt," he called out, the visitor logbook in hand. "Who goes there?" The group of 5 ninjas stopped at the gates, and the male jounin took out a scroll bearing the seal of Tsukigakure and handed it to Izumo. The brunette Chunin opened the scroll and read it, glancing up every now and again at the Tsuki-nins. He finally nodded and wrote something in the visitor logbook before producing a clipboard from out of nowhere and handed it to the male jounin. "Please fill the form in, thank you," he said politely, and which the male Tsuki jounin handed to the female jounin to fill in. Izumo then smiled. "May I see your passports, please?" The 5 Tsuki-nins produced their passports from their pockets silently, which kind of unnerved the 2 Konoha Chunins. None of the Tsuki-nins have said a single word ever since their arrival at the front gates. "May I have your names, please?" Izumo asked, pausing in his scribbling in the visitor logbook, and looking up at the 5 ninjas, with the male jounin looking rather annoyed. A jab in his ribs by his female companion shut him up before he grumbled something and muttered his name, Mamachi Zabuza, jounin instructor of these brats. If the 2 Konoha Chunins were unnerved at having Mamachi Zabuza at their gates, and in front of them, they didn't show it. The silver-haired genin looked at his jounin instructor with annoyance on his face at being addressed as a brat. "Sasaki Rihon. Yukina Haku." The Kunoichi genin gave a short bow. "Tetsuyama Kaio. Nice to meet you." The cheerful blonde genin chirped. "I'm the Tsukikage delegate for the Chunin exams until he could arrive in person," the female jounin stated, "though I'm not sure if he can pull himself away from the village for now." She trailed off. The jounin then cleared her throat and looked at Izumo, a small smile tugging at the ends of her lips, though that smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Tsukishiro Seina, jounin delegate of Tsukikage Sama himself. Nice to meet you." In the local barbecue restaurant of Konoha, Yakiniku Q, Narashika was bored out of his mind and looking out of the window to amuse himself, waiting for his best friend, Akamichi Chouji, to finish his 20th helping of barbecued meat, and trying to shut out Ino's senseless screeching. He swore that if her voice got any louder, the restaurant's windows would soon break. After a hard training session, Namikaze Takara and Katu Ai, 2 of Team 7's genin, were coming to lunch with them. Their other teammate, Uchiha Hadake Sasuke, had gone home for lunch instead. It was a rare day when both of his adoptive parents were home and not on a mission or at the hospital taking care of an emergency. Narashika was looking out the window for something interesting to do when he saw a group of genins about his age stop in the middle of the marketplace and talk to 2 older ninjas with them. It looked like they were jounins. The 2 jounins then turned around and walked away from the 3 genins, who were talking to each other. Just then, a group of 3 AIM genins came up to them. It looked like all 6 of them knew each other because they were all talking and laughing with each other. Shika frowned as he looked at the hidaites of the first 3 genins. He didn't know who they were. He was sure he had never been to a village that had that symbol on their hit I-8. Shika interrupted Ino and Chaoji's argument by asking Takara and AI, "Hey, where do you think those three came from?" Takara and AI were amused by watching their friends argue about food, so they turned to look at Nara. Takara is almost an exact copy of her mother, except that her hair was golden around the edges. AI is almost an exact copy of his father when he was young, except that he has golden eyes. And unlike his father, AI kept his hair to shoulder length and tied it in a ponytail. Shika's question made Takara and AI blink like owls, and then they followed his finger to the genins he was pointing at. All three of them were talking with their AIM friends about recent events or news. When the two genins saw the symbol on their hit I-8s, they blinked. As Takara is the daughter of the Hokage and AI is the son of Konoha's head medic and the Jounin commander, they both tend to know a lot of things that most other genin wouldn't. When Takara saw the symbol on the hit I-8, she opened and closed her eyes slowly. It wasn't a symbol she often saw on the hit I-8s of the foreign delegates who came to see her father, but she had seen it in books that the Hokage had bought for her to help her learn about diplomacy because she was his daughter. AI was the heir to both the Kadu and the Senju clans, so he had learned the same lessons about diplomacy and politics that she had. "Oh," said Takara. She looked at AI for a moment, then turned back to her lazy friend. "That's what Tsukigakure no Sato stands for." Shika was almost suffocated by his tea. He asked, "Titsuki, that mysterious village of the Great Six?" AI nodded. "Yeah, Konoha is the only one of the Great Six villages that doesn't send any of its genins to Chunin exams anywhere but their own village or AIM, which is an ally of Tsuki. From what I've heard from my parents, Konoha has been trying to get an alliance with Tsuki for years, ever since the reign of the Sandaime Hokage. But it hasn't been going well because it's hard to even see." Takara said, "My dad told me that they'd be here today. And unlike most villages, Tsuki only sent one team to the Chunin exams. Even Suna sent 2 teams. Dad told me not to underestimate the genins from Tsuki because that village is famous for its sealing skills. But until now, no one knew what techniques they were capable of. That's why everyone is so interested in them. They've been quite a mystery for years." She added. Ino looked sad. "I've never seen them before, but I think Uruka-sensei talked about them at one point in history class." "Well, they aren't called the most mysterious village of the Great Six for nothing," AI said. "Dad told me that they got involved in the Hyuga matter a few years ago when Kumo accused Konoha of breaking the treaty. At that time, they tried to demand reparations or we'd go to war. AIM got us out of trouble, and Dad told me that Tsuki also got involved. But we didn't find out about it until at least 2 years later when Nagato-san came to Konoha. And no one but their own people is allowed in Tsuki no Kuni," Takara added. "No matter what they do, Tsuki will always know that they're in their lands. To this day, no one even knows where their ninja village is. Their advances in medic ninjutsu, surgery, and sealing techniques are enough to make any medic and seal master drool. And it's also because they're so mysterious that everyone wanted to find out more about them. Hence the turnout for the Chunin exams this year." AI added. "My dad said that Tsuki is just as strong as Konoha, if not stronger. No one knows for sure, though, because unlike the other villages of the Great Six, they've never been in a war or conflict. You could say that they're one of the neutral villages, and they're always there as a peacemaker when political conflicts break out, though they don't always get involved in things like that." "No way. Konoha is the strongest," Ino protested. Takara shrugged. "Well, seeing as how no one had ever engaged a Tsuki-nin in battle before, we don't know that for sure," she said. "Or, there have been times when Tsuki-nins fought other ninjas, but they didn't make it out alive. It's also said that Tsuki has never failed a mission, and that even their genins are as skilled as an experienced Chunin." She gave AI a look. "Well, we'll know for sure once the Chunin exams commences." Nagato asked with trepidation, "Do you think it's a good idea for the other ninjas to see that the ninjas of AIM and Tsuki all get along?" The 4 Jounins of AIM and Tsuki were having lunch in a cubicle in a restaurant in Konoha. The Jounins have parted ways with their genins earlier, trusting that they are each cool-headed enough and also old enough to know their manners, and to know what they can and can't do in foreign territory. They also told the genins where the hotel is and told them to come back before it got dark, because the genins wanted to go exploring on their own before the exams the next day. "Well, it's not exactly a secret that AIM and Tsuki work together, is it?" asked a tired Sena. "I wanted to see for myself what Seo and Madara's work has done to the village. Even if they hadn't sent me as a Tsuki delegate, I still would have come," she said, lowering her voice so that only the 3 Jounin with her could hear. "So far, what I've seen doesn't impress me, and I can see why they left in the first place." Konan told Sena. "Yahiko told us to be careful around the Kiri ninjas," and Sena nodded. I heard that they're still in the middle of a civil war. Their Yonde Mizukage isn't happy with Tsuki for poaching 2 of his 7 swordsmen. He and their daimyo can't really do anything, especially since the daimyos and cages of Tsuki no Kuni and Ambakure are speaking up for those 2. Zabuza said, I'm more worried about what will happen here in a month. Seo-sama told us she'll look into it. But I'm still worried, he said with a small frown. Rihan pointed in an unknown direction and said, I think it's that way. Kaio insisted, no, it's this way. She pointed in the other direction. Haku rolled her eyes in irritation and then grabbed both of her teammates' arms. Let's just say it, we're lost, right? She asked, annoyed, and the reddening of her teammates' faces told her the answer. Great. We should have asked Jun and the other 2 how to get to the hotel before we split up, and I'm not going to ask a Leaf citizen for directions because they'll just keep us talking, she said with a sneer. Most of Tsuki's higher-ups, even the members of Team Uruha, the legendary team led by Tsukage's wife, seemed to dislike the Leaf village. This dislike seemed to have spread through Tsuki's ranks. The 3 Tsuki genin and their AIM friends ate at a restaurant, and some of the people there asked them about their village, which they didn't like. Don't they know what it's a village secret means? No one in Tsuki would turn against their own village. They'd rather kill themselves by seppuku. Hey, shorty, that hurts. Rihan turned to look in the direction of the angry shout and wondered, what's going on over there? Let's go see, Kaio suggested before walking towards the source of the sound. And the 3 Tsuki nins soon found a small brunette boy around the age of 7 or 8 struggling against the Suna ninja's hold, whilst the Suna Kunoichi with him was looking at him with annoyance and irritation written all over her face. 2 of the little boy's friends were yelling at the Suna ninja, and there were also 2 Leaf genins on the scene trying to keep things from getting worse. The Suna ninja holding the little boy was wearing a black outfit that makes all 3 Tsuki nins think of a cat. Rihan said to his teammates, who were making fun of him, and here I thought Abido-san had bad style. He then spoke louder. Oi, what do you think that you're doing? The 2 Suna nins noticed them just then, and the Suna Kunoichi narrowed her eyes as she noticed their Hidai-8s and elbowed her companion in the side. The other Suna nin grumbled as he let the boy go. The boy ran and hid behind a red-headed Leaf Kunoichi who was also at the scene. This Kunoichi reminded all 3 Tsuki nin of their Tsukage's wife. There were some clear differences between them. One is the difference in age and height. Seo-sama, on the other hand, had golden highlights in her hair, and her eyes weren't sky blue like this girl's. It is more of a deep dark blue, almost the color of a stormy sky. But other than that, this Leaf Kunoichi could almost be a copy of their Tsukage's wife. Kaio said, Suna nins, as he looked at the 2 and scratched the back of his head. Rihan, Haku, didn't Sensei and Sana-san say something about one of the 2 Suna teams taking the Chunin exams? Rihan nodded and kept his eyes on the 2 Suna nin who were tensing up. Yeah, the team made up of the current Kei's children, he said. I think Sana-san talked about them at dinner yesterday. Haku said with a frown as she tapped her chin and scrunched her forehead. Sabaku no Temari and Sabaku no Kenkuro, I think, she said slowly, trying to remember the names out of all the names the 2 Tsuki Jounins had said. The siblings of Sabaku no Gara. Kaio blinked. He said, oh, that guy. That Ikubai guy, right. He said with a smile to the 2 scared Suna nin who were staring at him in horror. He then looked up at a tree nearby. Is he the redhead up there? A few moments later, a figure appeared in a swirl of sand next to the 2 Suna genin. Haku didn't say anything, but she was a little worried by the dark feeling in the newcomer's chakra. As her team's healer and sensor, she is more sensitive to changes in nature and chakra than the other 2. Gee Gara, I guess you're their leader. Rihan asked this question to Gara, who narrowed his eyes and gave a short nod. Keep an eye on your team, he said. I don't think you want to be kicked out before the exams even start. He turned to leave and said, come on, you guys. We haven't found the hotel yet. Gara called out, wait. The 3 Tsuki nin stopped in their tracks and turned to look at the clearly sleepy Suna nin over their shoulders. What are your names? The 3 Tsuki nin looked at each other, Kaio raising an eyebrow, Haku looking between their 2 groups, and Rihan sighing and shrugging one shoulder. An unasked question was answered in a few moments. Team 10 of Tsukagakure had always been at the top when it came to communication and teamwork. They could have been made Chunin or even Jounin by now, but Zabuza wanted them to get more experience first. From Tsukagakure, Yukina Haku said politely as she walked toward the 3 Suna nin. Same, Sasaki Rihan said in a short way. Tatsuyama Kaio stated. Are you here for the exams for Chunin? Gara asked, showing a momentary look of interest, and the 3 Tsuki nin looked at each other. You're right, so we'll see you again during the exams, Rihan said politely. taking on the role of mediator. All three Tsuki genins had been trained in diplomacy to some degree, but Rihan was the heir to one of Tsuki's oldest clans, the legendary Swordsman clan, and he had been trained in diplomacy and politics since he was old enough to hold a sword. He then made a motion with his head and said, "Let." From behind the Suna trio, Takara saw the cork on the big gird of that Gara kid pop off, sending sand flying faster than the eye could see toward the back of the silver-haired Tsuki genin she thought was the leader. "Attention," she yelled as a warning, and the three Tsuki genins stopped in their tracks, looking shocked and confused. Gara's face looked a little crazy, if anyone cared to look. But at this point, no one was looking at Gara because they were too busy looking at the sand all around them. Before the sand could bury the three Tsuki genins, a few things happened right away. Rihan, who was about to pull out his sword, raised an eyebrow as Kaio put himself between the sand and his teammates, with a half-sad look on his face. Rihan, who had been Kaio's best friend since they were young and knew the reputation of his clan, laughed. He knew that look on Kaio's face. Kaio simply put out his hand, and to the surprise of all the ninjas watching, especially the Suna nins, the sand was deflected by a force that didn't seem to be there. Then, without any warning, the sand just fell apart, and gravel and silt slowly trickled to the ground. Temari and Kenkuro's faces were almost funny to look at because this was the first time they'd seen someone stop Gara's sand, which they thought was unstoppable. Gara's face was shocked because he'd never seen anyone stop his sand before and succeed. No one thought this was possible. His sand couldn't have stopped, and nothing could have. As the red-haired Suna nin tried to regain control of his sand, the silver-haired Tsuki nin from earlier spoke. "I'll tell you to stop," he said quickly, and all eyes were on him. Rihan's dark blue eyes flashed in warning, and he had one hand on the hilt of the Nadachi on his back. "Your sand and your techniques are useless against Kaio." Gara turned his attention to the blonde in the Tsuki team. At first, he didn't think much of the blonde teen because he had a cheeky look on his face. Instead, he focused on the silver-haired leader of the group because he looked more serious. However, it seems that Gara misjudged the danger level of the blonde. From the looks of things, he is much more dangerous than the silver-haired boy. He has to be able. If Gara didn't know better, he would think that someone else had taken control of Tatsuyama Kaio's body. Gone was the cheeky and mischievous look on his face, and his eyes were now cold and shining like gimlets, with a slight red glow. "If you want to fight, at least wait until the Chunin exams," Haku said. "We're in a foreign country, and it wouldn't be smart to fight and get kicked out of the exams." She looked at her teammates and said, "Let's go." Rihan nodded, but Kaio's eyes flashed in a dangerous way, and he slowly took his other hand out of his pocket and clenched it into a fist. It could have been Gara's imagination, but he was sure the temperature had dropped a few degrees. "Kaio," Rihan said firmly, grabbing his arm and forcing the blonde to look him in the eye. "You promised," he said with emphasis. "You promised Seo-sama that you wouldn't lose control again. So, in the end, she gave in and let you join a genin team. Do you want to be held prisoner again?" Kaio frowned, then jerked his arm out of Rihan's grip and put both hands in his pockets. The creepy feeling from before went away as soon as it started, and the blonde then turned around with his back to the Suna nin and the two shocked leaf nin. Rihan said, "Let's go," and Haku agreed. The three Tsuki nin then walked down the road and were soon out of sight. What the heck was that? Kenkuro finally found his voice after the Tsuki nins had been out of sight for almost a minute. What did that guy just do? He stopped Gara's sand from moving. That can't be. And they seem to know about him, too, Temari said, looking at her youngest brother with fear. What kind of monster is that other guy, if he can easily stop her youngest brother's attack? Gara frowned before regaining control of his sand, putting it back in his gourd, and making another cock to fill the lid. "Let's go," he said, and the two Suna nin nodded and followed him. Ai finally found his voice and said, "It looks like there will be a lot of strong guys in the Chunin exams," and Takara slowly nodded. Something caught her attention out of the corner of her eye, and when she turned, she was shocked by what she saw. The tree next to the path they were walking on had been a healthy pine tree just a few minutes ago, but now it looked like it had been dead for months. Takara frowned. That guy from Tsuki, she thought, clenching her hands into fists in her pockets to stop her hands from shaking. What did he just do? And I know I've heard the name Tatsuyama before. Morigaki-in. Tori no Kuni. Seo frowned as she listened to the dial tone of the phone and tapped her fingers on the inn's front desk over and over again while she waited for someone to pick up the other end of the line. She couldn't believe that some ninja villages were so stuck in the past and still used bird messengers, quills, and scrolls when the rest of the world had moved on and now used telephones instead of bird messengers and pens and notebooks instead of quills and scrolls. Sure, Tsuki still uses eagle or hawk messengers to talk to their ninjas when they are out in the field, and they still use quills and scrolls to seal things, but unlike most ninja villages today, they also have some modern technology in their village. The Tsuki Genin team and Seina and their Jounin instructor left for Konoha almost 5 days ago to take the Chunin exams. Seo also left Tsuki around the same time, feeling a little worried about the news from AIM about Raven's Gate and the strange bodies that Yahiko's ninjas have been finding around AIM's borders. When the call was finally answered, Seo recognized the voice as belonging to an office ninja who worked in the Tsukikage Tower. When Madara and Seo first started Tsukigakure no Sato, the first thing they did before they started building was decide on the village system. Seo knew from her time as head tactician in Konoha, especially after the war, how annoyed and fed up the first Hokage, Senju Hashirama, had become with all the paperwork he had to read and sign every day. During peacetime, this was a common problem, but most of the time, 90% of the paperwork was about boring or small things that didn't need the Hokage's signature or time. Seo created a new position called Office Ninjas to stop her husband, Madara, from going on a rampage. She knew how impatient Madara could get at times, so she did this. Most of these ninjas had never risen above the rank of Chunin or weren't even strong enough to be sent out on the field. There are also civilians who have had some ninja training, usually because they were born into a ninja family, or who have tried to get into the ninja academy but failed. Office ninjas' jobs are to sort through the papers and send only the important ones to the Tsukikage's office. These are the papers that Madara needs to look at. So, unlike most cages, Madara had a lot of time to spend with his family because he never had to deal with foreign diplomats. This was because Tsuki only had an alliance with AIM at the time, so Madara didn't have to deal with any other countries. And Yahiko is the kind of leader who does things on his own. He never asks Tsuki for help with any problems his country is having. When Nagato asked him why, he said that he didn't deserve to be the leader of AIM if he couldn't handle a problem that affected his own country and village on his own. Seo could only think of one time when Yahiko had asked them for help, when the Bone Eater happened and strange bodies were found near the border of AIM. Seo sighed. "Hey, Ku, would you please connect me to the Tsukikage?" she asked in a low voice. She is in the main lobby of the inn, after all, and she isn't taking any chances, even though it's lunchtime and most of the workers are busy with customers. Seo had put up a barrier between herself and the phone as a safety measure. This barrier lets her hear everything going on around her but not the other way around. "Seo-sama?" asked the office ninja who had picked up one of Tsukigakure's few phones. His voice came through the phone clear as day. Most likely, the only places in Tsuki with phones and other modern technology are the Tsukikage Tower, the academies for both ninja and regular people, the moon headquarters, and the hospital. Wait a minute, Tsukikage-sama might be back in his office. Before Madara picked up the phone, there was another long ring. "What's that?" Seo sighed. She said, "It's me," and Madara's voice was alert and serious at that moment. "Seo, what's wrong?" Seo pinched her nose bridge. "Bad news, I'm afraid," she said wearily. "I've just been to Rice Field Country, where Oto is said to be. I was worried about the rumors, so I had Orochimaru get some information from his spies. Madara, Oto is definitely under Raven's Gate's control. And from what Orochimaru could find out, they've been around for about a decade, but only became a ninja village last year." Before he spoke again, Madara was quiet for a long time. "Where in the world is their village?" Seo frowned and said, "I'm not sure about this, but I know for sure that Otagakure isn't built on the surface. If it was, I would have found it a long time ago, especially since my wolves help me find things when I'm in Rice Field Country." "No," Seo frowned. "The base is underground, and Kakuzu is in charge of the new Oto village." Madara didn't say anything for a long time. "So he's still alive," he said. He sounded surprised, but Seo isn't shocked. They never thought that the man was still alive. Seo knew the ritual that he had used back then. It was the sacrifice-based ritual for immortality. No one can kill him, at least not in the usual way. "Has Nagato told you anything about the rumored invasion?" "Yeah, that's not a rumor at all," Seo said with a frown. "This invasion kind of helps Raven's Gate, too, since they want to find something in Konoha. Not that stupid key to Hora's seal, which doesn't even exist." He groaned. Seo replied, "No, I don't think so." She sighed and said, "I think it's more of a someone. I'm not sure what to think about this, though. Tell Seina and the others to be careful. I'll find out more on my own. And I'm going to the place where I sealed Hyora away all those years ago," she said with a frown. "I'm a little worried. From what I can tell, Raven's Gate has been moving since the Kyuubi attack 12 years ago. And something doesn't seem quite right. I'm going to go check on the seal." Madara was quiet for a while before he let out a sigh. "I understand, but be careful, okay?" He sounded worried. I don't want you to fight any Raven's Gate members yet because we don't know how strong they are or how many there are. Also, I'm sending Team Uruha to find out more about the Konoha invasion. Sayo made a face. She repeated, my team. Yes, you should focus on Raven's Gate for now. Sana and Zabuza will do what they can to find out what's going on in Konoha. So far, we know that Suna is involved in some way. And even though Uruha is missing Sana right now, I think they'll be okay. Sayo made a face. Well, if you say so, she said. Then she frowned because she had a sudden thought. Also, are they even back from Nami no Kuni yet? Area 44 of the training ground. Kano Hagakure no Sato. The second part of the Chunin exams is currently going on. All of the qualified genin teams are being given one scroll, either an Earth scroll or a Heaven scroll, and told to get the opposite scroll from the other team. The genin teams have 5 days to find their scrolls in the Forest of Death. This is the first day, and the Tsuki team is already getting very angry. In the 4 hours they've been in the forest, they've already frozen a Suna team that isn't the same one they met on their first day in Konoha, tied a senior Konoha genin team to a tree, but not before taking all their supplies, knocked out an Iwa genin team with some quick swordsmanship, and ran into one of the 2 Odo teams that were sent here, which Haku. And after 4 hours in the forest, Team 10 from Tsukigakure already had 2 Heaven Scrolls, 2 Earth Scrolls, and the Heaven Scroll they were given before the test. And just as they were heading toward the tower in the middle of the forest, led by Haku, who had a map of the forest with her, they were stopped again by another genin team. This time it was from Kumo. Haku sighed and slapped her forehead in anger, while Kaio and Rihan just looked annoyed. Like most of the other grade 6, Tsuki had never liked Kumo. When Kumo caused the Hyuga incident in Konoha, Tsuki was also involved, and almost every ninja in Tsuki was not happy when they heard that the Raikage had made demands of their Tsukikage. Since then, things have been at best rocky between Tsuki and Kumo. We sure are popular, aren't we? Rihan said under his breath, rolling his eyes up to the sky and muttering something irritable. Behind the bushes that surrounded the clearing they were in, about 25 meters away, the silver-haired swordsman could feel that 3 genins were watching them. But he didn't pay any attention to them right now. Instead, he focused on the 3 Kumo genins standing in front of them. The 3 Kumo genins in front of them seemed to be older than the Tsuki genins by at least 3 or 4 years. All 3 were pretty big in size and shape, making them tower over the 3 Tsuki nin, who were small and short. Kaio almost moaned. Let's just get this over with so we can go sleep in the tower. He yelled, I'm tired and want to sleep because I have a headache. Rihan looked at his best friend with worry on his face and turned to him. But you're in charge, right? He asked, and Kaio rolled his eyes in frustration. Yes, I do, was all he said. Don't worry, Rihan. I'll take care of it. What do you 3 want from us? Haku asked the Kumo team in front of them as she rubbed her temples. Even the always patient Kunoichi are starting to lose their cool because so many teams have ambushed them in the last 4 or so hours. Your scroll, said the middle Kuno genin, who was the biggest and seemed to be the leader. Rihan had given him the name Hulk in secret. Give us your scroll, and we won't hurt you. We're older than you, so we must be stronger. Kaio's eye was moving in a dangerous way. Rihan, can I? He asked, putting his left-hand fingers together. Rihan sighs. Do as you like, he said. Tsuki has never liked Kumo, and I don't like it when people underestimate us because of our rank or age. Just hurry up, he said with a sigh and a neck crack. I want to sleep. The first Kumo minion smiled and then moved his fingers. He said, let's just kill them. And then he made a few hand seals and shot a blast of white lightning at the Tsuki genins. Kumo minion too did what he did, but his jutsu made a lot of lightning bolts fall from the sky on the Tsuki genins. When the 2 jutsus hit each other, there was a loud blast and a cloud of dust. Behind a bush, and Yuzuka Kiba was covering Hyuga Hinata's mouth to stop her horrified scream. SHH. He told his teammate to be quiet. If they knew we were here, we'd be dead. Plus, Kiba looked at the smoke and dust cloud. If what AI and Takara said is true, I don't think that we'll take down those Tsuki nin so easily. Aburame Shino was also there when AI and Takara told the rest of the Rookie 9 what they had seen the Tsuki genins do. He nodded when they said it. Kumo Minion 1 cheered, we did it. My white lightning is so strong that not even Tsuki can stand up to it. Hulk's eyes got smaller as the dust slowly settled. No, Jin. Open your eyes and take a good look. What? When the dust finally settled, the 3 Kumo genins and the 3 Hidden Leaf genins were shocked to see that the 2 lightning jutsus had made a big hole. But the 3 Tsuki genins weren't even hurt. And now that Kiba has stopped to look at them, they don't look upset or like they've been fighting at all. Shino, who is the most observant member of the Konoha team, could just barely see the signs that the 3 Tsuki genins were surrounded by a chakra barrier. and being able to stop 2 lightning jutsus at the same time is pretty impressive and a sign of strength. Rihan sighed and slashed at the air with the middle and index fingers of his right hand. There was a faint ripple of chakra in the air before he let the chakra barrier fall. "Kaio, please finish it," he said, and his voice had a dark tone to it. Rihan's face didn't say anything, but both of his teammates could see in his eyes that he wanted to kill. "They really do want to kill us. I don't think we can wait any longer." Kaio smirked darkly. He said, "Gotcha," and then took one step forward. "Set up level 3 spirit and chakra barriers," he said. He took off his jacket and threw it to Haku, who caught it easily. Even though they are in a bad situation, Hinata blushed a little when she saw his toned biceps from behind the bushes. Shino frowned as he stood next to her and saw seals peeking out from under his shirt sleeves. Why did they have those seals? Kaio then narrowed his eyes and bent the fingers on both hands. "I'm about to go crazy." Rihan groaned. He said, "On it." "Haku, spirit barrier. I'll set up the chakra barrier." Haku nodded, and then the 2 genin took an empty scroll out of their bag and opened it with a light pull. As the scrolls unrolled themselves, both genin wrote seals on the paper as it flew by them and landed in a perfect circle around them. The 3-leaf genins were amazed when they saw 2 genins not much older than them draw and write what looked like complicated seals in a matter of seconds. Hulk whistled to show his thanks. He said, "It looks like the rumors about Altsuki ninjas knowing a lot about seals are true. But here, your seals won't help you." Rihan smirked darkly. He said, "We'll see about that. The seals are only here to protect us from Kaio's technique, which he's about to use on you fools. When he goes crazy, nothing can stop him," he said, narrowing his eyes in a dangerous way. "He is, after all, a Tatsuyama." When they heard that, the 3 Kumo genins' eyes widened. Then, the blonde kid on the Tsuki team let out a blast of dark chakra, and the band that held his hair in a ponytail broke and fell apart. The force of the blow actually knocked over the leaf genins hiding in the bushes, and Shino's bugs were shaking. Akamaru was whining and shaking in fear in Kiba's jacket. And just as quickly as it had started, it was over. Shino was the first one to get back to normal after the chakra blast. When he looked through the bushes, his whole body stiffened up, and his shocked and horrified eyes widened behind his sunglasses. Now he knew why his bugs had stopped talking and wouldn't talk to him before. What is this strength? All of the plants within a 5-meter radius of that blonde kid had rotted and died. It looks a lot like a battlefield scene from the Third Great Shinobi War that Shino had only seen in his academy textbooks. Shino then looked over to where the 3 Kumo nin had been standing, and he stopped in shock. It's true that they were no longer there, but a pile of clothes that the Kumo team had been wearing was right where they had been standing a few minutes before. On top of each pile of clothes was a Kumo Hirai 8. What power is that? Shino was horrified by what he was thinking. That person, is he even alive? Now the Abure mare knew why the other 2 Tsuki genins had put up that barrier. If they hadn't done that, they would have been killed just like the Kumo. Your power and control are getting better, Haku told Rihan as he rolled up the 2 scrolls around them. He groaned. We'll have to learn a higher level of barrier to stop your ability, though. It looks like level 3 isn't enough. He pointed at his foot, and when Kaio looked down, he saw a dark patch of blackened grass. All of the plants there had died. Kaio said, "I'm sorry, but it looks like I'm in control of Spirit Drain now." "What scroll do they have?" Rihan said, "Let's see." He walked up to the 3 piles of clothes and looked through each one until he found the scroll. He showed it to his teammates and said, "This is an earth scroll." Then he threw it to Haku. "Catch." The girl with dark hair caught it easily before putting it in the belt sash around her waist. When the Leaf team saw that it had at least 5 other scrolls in it, their eyes grew wide. Kaio yelled, "Let's get to the tower." "I'm tired." His 2 teammates didn't say anything about how angry or rude Kaio was. They knew that Kaio always acts like that and is especially angry after using one of his death techniques. It's almost like he has bipolar disorder, especially since Kaio is usually a very happy and cheerful person. Rihan nodded. "Let's get going," he said. "Kaio needs to rest, and so do I," he said, and he and Kaio walked away. Kaio's bangs fell into his red eyes, which looked angry and scary to anyone who wasn't his teammate. Rihan called out, "Haku, come on," as he went behind something that used to be a group of bushes. Haku told her 2 male teammates, "I'm coming," before looking behind her and in the direction of where the Leaf team was hiding. All 3 of the Leaf genins became stiff. Did she realize they were there? Kiba swore to himself for the 100th time that spying on the Tsuki team was a stupid idea. Hinata shook in fear as Haku put one hand into the sash around her waist. The dark-haired Kunoichi then pulled out 2 scrolls, one about heaven and one about earth. Haku sighed and then threw the 2 scrolls at Konoha's teammate. The scrolls landed in front of them. Haku told the 3 Leaf genins who were hiding, "Get to the tower," but she couldn't see them. Forget what you've seen here, Haku said, and then she turned and walked away, following in the steps of her teammates. After what seemed like a long time, the three-leaf genin sat down and took deep breaths on the forest floor. Tiba said, shaking with fear, I feel like this just took 10 years off my life. Hinata nodded to show that she agreed, but what bothers her is what one of the Tsuki genins said earlier. The seals are only here to keep us safe from the technique Kaio is about to use on you idiots. You see, he can't be stopped when he goes crazy. He is, after all, a Tatsuyama. Hinata thought. Tatsuyama as she held one hand to her chest and tried to slow down her heart, which was beating very fast. I know I've heard that name before, she said with a frown. Perhaps I should ask Sensei, Aoi-kun, or Takara-chan later. Tatsuyama, she mused. Where have I heard that name before? Takara yelled at the strange hooded guy who had appeared out of nowhere and started beating up Team 7. What are you doing? Nothing they did seemed to hurt him, and when Sasuke came at him with a kunai, he just grabbed Sasuke's wrist and forced him to his knees while holding his arms behind him. What are you doing? Ai tried to get up, but his 5 broken ribs hurt so much that he had to grit his teeth and was almost out of it. He held one hand to his side. He almost fell to his knees when he coughed up blood. Sasuke hissed, what are you doing? And then froze, as if his whole body had been paralyzed by whatever that guy had done. Hey, what are you doing? Let me go. Over to Takara, who had broken her ankle and was barely able to move. She also had 5 broken ribs and a sprained wrist on her left side, so she wasn't in the best shape to be moving around. The redhead watched in horror as the man in the hood pulled Sasuke's hair away from his nape of the neck and bit his thumb, drawing blood. Then he made some strange marks on Sasuke's neck. Let go, the man in the hood said, and Sasuke's eyes grew wide. Then his eyes rolled back into his head, and he passed out. Takara's eyes got smaller because she was sure she saw Sasuke's eyes glow a faint electric blue right before he passed out. The man in the hood then grabbed Sasuke by the middle of his body, lifted him up, and whispered in his ear, "We await your awakening." Ai growled, "Let Sasuke go. I won't let you take him." He then forced himself to his feet, even though it hurt, and threw his sword at the man, who dodged it and let go of Sasuke at the same time. Takara yelled, "Sasuke," as her teammate jumped off the tree he was standing on and into the air with a parachute. She tried to get up, but she fell back down on her bottom. Damn, it was the 100th time she wished she had taken Tsunade or Shizune up on their offer to learn some medical ninjutsu. Just then, there was a dark blur, and Takara blinked as Ai ran along the tree branch, jumped off the branch after Sasuke, and threw a kunai with ninja wire wrapped around the handle at the tree trunk they were on. Takara yelled Ai, in fear. Even though his ribs were broken, Ai was able to wrap one arm around Sasuke's waist just before the wire ran out. When he did, he stopped dead in the air and heard a loud crack. His shoulder hurt so badly that he almost passed out. The young man with silver hair cursed to himself. Damn, my shoulder is out of place. The worst time to do that when he looked down, he almost choked because he couldn't see the bottom. The man in the hood said, "Don't worry, I won't do anything else." He then looked from Takara to the hanging Ai, or at least both conscious genin thought he was looking at them because of his hood. When Uchiha Sasuke wakes up, tell him this: if he wants to blame anyone, he should blame his ancestors. He will wake up soon. And Namikaze Takara. Takara stiffened as the man turned toward her. Tell your father this. Don't cancel the Chunin exams, or I'll do worse than what I did in your village 12 years ago. Your father will understand what I mean. Raven's Gate will never be gone. As long as there are humans and ninjas, we will live on. Not known where. Hai no Kuni, Sayo said to herself. If I'm not mistaken, it should be around here. She kept her eyes on the blue glowing sealing orb she was holding in her left hand. This is the same sealing orb she used to seal horror away almost 80 years ago, and she is using it now to find out where the seal is. Since then, years had passed, and things had changed, so much so that Sayo could hardly recognize it anymore. She had to use her sealing orb to find the seal's exact location. The redhead said a prayer that the seal wasn't broken, because if it was, she didn't want to think about it. Sayo frowned as she came out onto a cliff that stuck out into the sea. It was a familiar sight that she had only seen once before, when she sealed horror away 80 years ago. Her eyes got a little bigger in shock. Shit. The waves crashed onto the rocks below the cliff, and she could hear the gulls calling out for food above her. Sayo wasn't thinking about any of those things, though. Instead, she was staring in shock at the big dark purple-black crystal in front of her. The crystal is the seal itself, so it shouldn't be possible to see it as long as the seal is holding Toshigaki Hora back as it should. Seo's blue sealing orb gently rolled away from her foot as it landed on the grass. Seo found it very hard to breathe at that moment. Only one thing can be said about the fact that the seal crystal could be seen. Someone had broken the seal.
I will continue this story in next part. Till then, we weeb offline.